He looked upward at me, smiling, cornering me. What do you know about headhunters? Enough to be careful. What do you know about them? Enough to want to take moving pictures of them. Moving pictures? Yes, my gear is at the hotel. I have some photographers there too, and I rather think we can meet the question of payment. Would £25 a day be all right? To me, that was a huge sum, and I tried not to show too much interest. Swartz added, "Of course, we take care of the provisions, the oil, anything else." I appeared to remain unconvinced. Whatever he paid would go to Burns Phillips anyway. They drew their take first, paid me on my return to the port. Must this be the Sepik River? It'll be rough. You could see headhunters along other rivers, and even along the coasts. No, the Sepik. You understand that's an unexplored river, 4 days up by boat. Nobody's been farther. It has to be the Sepik. We need background for a film we're making. The pictures we shoot are sent back to Hollywood and used in connection with a story filmed there. At that point, Exter spoke up. "Mr. Flynn will take you, I'm pretty sure. I don't know why he's hesitating." He gave me a look that said, "You and Miller still owe us £900. For the next 2 months, I cruised with filmmaker Swartz, his photographers, and my crew across the waters to the mainland of New Guinea, to the northeast coast where the red, muddy Sepik flowed into the sea. We moved into the broad stream, running against a strong current, the Mosky able to take the river as we did not draw more, loaded, than 6 or 7 feet of water. The Sepik is a monster waterway, 600 miles long. No white man has ever been up the river more than 200 or 300 miles, and the nature of the river or the land beyond that was practically unknown, and remains little known even to this day. The waterway was heavily populated with mosquitoes, kanakas, and pukpuks, crocodiles. We steamed up the river only 2 days' distance, the camera work going on much of the time. It wasn't easy to get close-up shots of the natives. As we traveled, the garamuts, the tom-toms made of crocodile skin, we came up a steady communication. "Outsiders, big magic on the water, beware," the drums said. When we came in close to shore and tried to get film of the natives, we got arrows instead, real ones, and poisoned. Here's a letter I wrote to my father shortly after that trip. "Dear Sport, thanks very much for the D'Albert's New Guinea. Of course, I've never been in any of the parts that he writes of, but his description of the Fly River natives corresponds exactly with these bastards of the Sepik River in this territory. They do up their hair in precisely the same manner and wear the same clothes, that is, none at all, except a vine G-string sometimes. From D'Alberta's time till now, they've changed very little. They still run away, every blankety one of them. And when you get near their village, and they still run like hell when they're fired at. Also, if they think it's safe, they'll shoot at you with spears and arrows. In this respect, they differ considerably from the natives of the other uncontrolled areas who will put up a good fight until 1 or 2 of them get shot. Then they go for their lives. Your son." Swartz and I became very friendly, and he confided to me that the film his photographers were taking, especially of the mouth of the river, wasn't entirely for purposes of backgrounding a motion picture. The United States and Britain were expecting that one day trouble might blow in from the east, from Japan, and the United States and its probable allies knew little or nothing of the nature of this large hunk of British territory. One of the keys to its possession was this river. Some of the film, the vital shots of the river mouth, were for official purposes. How right he turned out to be. He asked whether I expected to remain a mariner all my days. I explained that I had no ambition beyond making some money. Soon I'd make a stab at the gold fields. He was interested when I explained there was sea-fearing blood in my whole line and told him of my sea-going grandfather. I also described the sword we had at home. I doubt, I told him, I could ever remain away from the ocean for very long. For days I watched the way a motion picture camera lens silently swallowed the landscape. I was aware that, from time to time, one of the cameramen shot me as I took the wheel, or had to get into crocodile-infested waters to shove us off a sandbank. Once he ceased grinding the scenery long enough to film me at the water's edge, tangling with a crocodile for fun and sport, tantalizing the scaly bastard with a bamboo pole. I couldn't know that later. When the film was run off, my youthful pranks were carefully noted by Schwartz and his colleagues. The trip up the Sepik revived my original interest in the goldfields. I realized that there was no good reason to be in New Guinea other than to try to strike it rich. When I returned to caving in early 1929, I learned that I was finished at the copra plantation. I had been away too long to please the proprietors. That, and the realization I'd never get rich on the Mosque, decided me to head back to the mainland. I said goodbye to Mahiti, but leaving her with many presents. In the interim, she had restored contact with some of her tribe, and she would return to live with them. But she would go back a rich girl, by prevailing standards. I had begun with my first New Guinea mistress, a practice that I was to bring to a fine art later in Hollywood when I bestowed upon wives and mistresses. Or, wait a minute, had taken from me huge alimonies, houses, fortunes. I sold out my interest in the Mosque to Dusty Miller, and with a few pounds in my pocket, I went by inter-island steamer to Salamoa, on the east coast of the New Guinea mainland. Eddy Creek Goldfield, discovered 2 or 3 years earlier, was a week's march inland from Salamana. You couldn't get in there unless you had native labor to go with you to hack out a path, to provide some protection from hostile tribes, and to work the earth when you arrived. From the sale of my share of the Mosque, I had enough money when I arrived to hire 8 boys and the necessary marching gear and gold-digging equipment. From Kanaka, each Kanaka carried a 50-pound load of produce, chiefly rice, and gadgets for trade. I tried to carry what they did, but they were conditioned to it. I was busy fighting off the leeches on my body all day. When we camped, the natives of the region came around to see who we were and what we had. As they had spears and preferred a shrunken white head to any other, I had the boys build a waist-high enclosure in which we stayed. Around the enclosure, I had them stretch a fishing line from tree to tree in a square or circle, and then I had them tell the onlookers by sign language or by talking their dialect that if any of them stepped inside that fishing line, they'd be shot. There were too many instances, all of a sudden, of stone axes and clubs hitting you from behind. It happened once, while drums were baying in the night all through the jungle, and we were holed up with the fishing line around us. A boy who must have been under 18 reached for something inside the fish line, and the guard immediately shot his hand off. That was the end of that day's trading. We had to go on, and the natives who peered at us from the bush vanished back into the jungle. At night, you'd hear those horrible noises coming at you in the pitch dark in your little clearing. You heard the bush crackle, and you knew they were around. If you found dry wood, you'd have a fire going, and it stood out like a beacon, drawing the Melanesian Kanakas for miles around. Melanesian Kanakas for miles around. While they prowled in the dark about you, you tried to sleep and fought off mosquitoes, leeches, bugs, giant roaches, and even New Guinea bats, night bloodsuckers. You'd wake from a few minutes' sleep, light a cigarette, de-leech yourself, put the fire on a damned leech, and burn him to a bloody pulp. then back to sleep for a bit and wonder whether that crawly sound you heard a few feet away might be a snake, a cassowary, or maybe only a wild boar razorback. I've seen Central Africa, but it was never anything like the jungle of New Guinea. Each day we climbed these precipitate hills, up and down, then almost straight up again. You could stand on one mountain range and almost piss straight across to another, 2 days' march away. This was the route to the gold fields. There were tall tales of a completely different culture beyond a range of mountains into which few men were ever known to have penetrated. When I got to the top of one of those mountains, I saw a vast belly of what they call kunai grass, a high stalk that stands 2 or 3 feet above a man's head. I had a little dog with me named Pickus, in New Guinea language, Little Croc. He had a ferocious snarl and a snap, and I loved him. You respected this dangerous small companion with his curly tail like a jaunty question mark. I didn't understand what was happening to him as we pushed into this grass. He started to drag his hind legs. Then he slowed down to a creep. He was always full of energy, and I wondered what was happening. At last, he stopped altogether, panted heavily for a while, and then died. Afterwards, I learned that 2 or 3 feet above the ground where the kunai grass grew, there was a poison gas emitted by the roots. The gas hung over the floor of the earth's surface so that poor little Pickus couldn't get his breath. The Eddy Creek Goldfield was more of a spectacle of men seeking gold than it was of gold waiting for men to find it. Not that there wasn't gold there, there was. I staked out a claim, a plot of sand about 100 yards square. A plot of soil about 100 yards square, registered with the administration and prepared to get rich overnight. Within a few days, I heard all around the cliché of the goldfield. There's too much New Guinea in the gold, they said, meaning that the earth was thin on gold, thick on soil. A few had hit the real good veins. The others had to scramble and muck through tons of earth for faint glimmerings. You can find this much gold anywhere in New Guinea, I heard them say. A man don't have to stay here and take it out where dozens are doing it. Somewhat discouraging. The gold area was high on the side of a mountain, perhaps 8,000 or 9,000 feet up. At night, the tropic region was wintry. By day, the natives and the white men chopped at the hillsides like termites, tearing up the soil and panning the earth. Crude living quarters, thatched huts, barracks, makeshift tents, spread out from several central administration buildings run by the Australian government. When I arrived with my small band of Kanakas, nobody took much notice. Prospecting parties came and went. Food was scarce. Disease was a rule of living. There was no medical attention. Natives died of pneumonia every day.